We're back now to our top story, where a new study has found that older people in Singapore want the government to manage issues of race and religion more closely. Younger Singaporeans prefer a lighter touch.
The findings were laid out in a paper by the Institute of Policy Studies at NUS. And for more on this, we're joined by Senior Research Fellow, Dr. Mathew Mathews. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Okay, so race and religion have historically been flashpoints in our nation's history. But why did this study then sort of branch further to include additional fault lines of class, immigration, LGBT issues?
Well, we do know that race and religion have been persistent issues. It continues to be issues today. There are fault lines that need to be managed. However, if you look at it, not just in Singapore, but internationally, there's been more and more concern about issues to do with immigration, for instance. In globalization, people's movement, you notice that people, different societies just have a hard time sometimes incorporating people who are new in their midst. You think about the population white paper a couple of years ago, some of those concerns that come out there. Same with class. Class wasn't really a big issue in Singapore for a long time because everybody comes from fairly similar, humble backgrounds. But with a lot of rapid development, more people are doing very well, some people are not doing as well, so you see the differences, whether it's lifestyle choices people make. So the gap is there. LGBT issues, you look around the world, you see different kind of polarization that happens because of different kind of considerations. So these are issues that are more and more prominent. I think as researchers, we feel that it's important to ask the population, what do you think about these fault lines, and whether these are the kind of salience and the concern that we think we see.
Okay, speaking of LGBT, so from this survey, it shows here that the higher educated have a gloomier outlook on the consequences of fault lines if the LGBT issue is mismanaged. Why do you think this is so?
Well, I think if you are better educated, you're also in touch with what is going on around the world, more access to information as such. And if you look at what happens in other societies, you do see some of the rifts that happen. And so seeing some of those rifts, seeing different groups, some groups feeling very, very sympathetic towards the needs of different communities, LGBT communities, others who find it very hard to accept that. I think if you're plugged into some of that information, you tend to be a little bit more gloomy because you do see some of the friction that happens and you want it to be managed.
And the survey also revealed potential race-related fractures, differing levels of trust amongst the races. Help us understand that.
Well, this has been something that we do know. It continues to exist in society. We don't trust at the same levels. I think that really the issue now is, what do we do about that? How do we ensure that race-related frictions don't become deeper and deeper? And I think that comes with that intentional attempt to understand the other. This is something that Singapore, we're big at. We strongly advocate that we are a multiracial society. So it takes more and more people to get in that bandwagon to say, hey, another culture might be quite different, the language, the choices, but I want to understand that. And and of course, fight against racism, which is perennial in many societies. And I won't be the one to pass on racist messages, for instance.
So, but what did the survey reveal about how the population feels about affirmative action and its understanding of meritocracy?
What we did find about affirmative action is a touchy issue. But in our survey, we did notice that among our minorities, there are a lot more, substantially a lot more interested in affirmative action. We asked in various ways, whether the government should give special treatment, preferential treatment to minorities for certain things. Also about, top civil service positions. Should they have more diversity rather than just the best person for the job? So for these, we noticed that the minorities are a lot more keen about that compared to the majority race. So clearly there is some kind of difference here. So you have the logic of meritocracy, and I think it's worked very well for Singapore. It's allowed the best to come up to the top. But then also there's the logic of representation as well. And being a multiracial society, we can't forget that part. So there are some things that we have to think about, not just about the most competitive person, but also how do we ensure some kind of reasonable representation, especially at top positions, for instance.
And representation does matter across all sorts of fields. Talking about class, immigration, LGBT, what did you learn from the study about how these issues are sort of discussed and how people want them to be discussed?
I think I think people are calling for more public discussion on these issues: class, LGBT, immigration. And if you're going to do any public discussion about it, or more public discussion, then there needs to be that willingness to respect different viewpoints. Because clearly, when we see in the survey, different groups do have stronger, and sometimes the viewpoints can be quite different. And if we are vilifying different viewpoints and being disrespectful, I don't think that helps generate the kind of conversations we really need to build that space. Also, then there must be that willingness to be open to different viewpoints, somehow or another. Some viewpoints might be, sometimes we just have blind spots and we're not seeing what we should be seeing. And I think if we are more open in these discussions, I think we can do much better.
Yeah, can we disagree and still move forward and get along?
Right.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Matthew Mathews, Senior Research Fellow at the Institute of Policy Studies at NUS.